Welcome to Milan Recording Studios. My name is James Pavel Shawcross, and in today's video I have a different type of video than I normally do. I am sitting at the piano, but I'm not actually going to be playing the piano in today's video at all. What I'm going to be doing is talking instead about humidity. Because as some of you might know, I actually recently moved from California out to Tennessee, which is where my recording studio is. And as many of you might know, there is a bit of a difference in the climate between California and Tennessee. Perhaps some areas of California are more humid than others, but in the part of California where I came from, which is in Northern California, kind of near the mountains, it was in the foothills, the humidity was rather dry. It was on the dry side, and the humidity throughout the year would fluctuate between around 40% to around 60%. Here in Tennessee, while I haven't lived here long enough to really be able to study it and the way it changes throughout the year, what I have noticed while I've been here is that the humidity is higher, at least in the summertime. It's around 60 to 70, up to 80 on some days in the humidity. So there is a lot of a difference between the two climates. California is more dry, and it's a more stable climate throughout the year, but there are two big swings in the humidity, one during the spring and one during the fall when we're exiting and entering summertime. Summertime is the drier time of the year. Where I lived, it almost never rained in the summertime, and it almost always rained throughout basically the entire winter. This last winter was extremely wet in California, at least in the part where I was from, and it was extremely, extremely wet. So basically in the wintertime, it's more humid. In the summertime, it's very dry. And over here in Tennessee, it rains more consistently throughout the year. So I'd imagine that in the wintertime, it's also going to be around that same humidity here. So when we talked to many of our friends that we were going to be moving out to Tennessee, the first thing that they would start to mention is the humidity and how would that affect your piano. So that is the topic of today's video, is humidity, how to deal with it, and what we have done to help control the humidity in the studio and to help protect the piano. Humidity is very important when it comes to pianos, and when it comes to things that make a piano go out of tune, there's nothing that changes the way a piano goes out of tune more than the humidity. If you let a piano just sit and you don't tune it, eventually, of course, it will go out of tune, and the main reason for that would be the humidity. There's a couple of other factors as well, like the stability of the tuning block, the tuning pin, and things like, the pin block. I can't speak today. The stability of the pin block would also be a factor of how long your piano will stay in tune, but the really big factor is the humidity. As the wood in the piano expands and contracts as the humidity changes, your piano will go out of tune. And so in California, like I said, there are those two big humidity swings in the year. During the spring and during the fall, the piano would go crazy out of tune, and we'd have to tune it multiple times to get it to stay in tune. And once it was in tune, it stayed pretty much in tune throughout the whole season. Sometimes there'd be a note out in the treble that would just kind of randomly go out from time to time, but it would stay in tune for pretty much the whole season until the other big humidity swing came along, and then everything would go crazy. So one really important thing with your piano is to keep the humidity as stable as possible. Now, out in California, that's a little bit trickier to do because, as I've said, the humidity was a bit drier, and it's easier to remove humidity from the air than it is to put it back into the air, especially in a drier climate like California. If you're in Southern California in the desert where it's like a 10% humidity, I don't know what you'd do. I really don't know what you'd do to get it at a normal humidity level. I didn't live in the desert. It was a deserty area, but not a true desert with cactuses and sand and all that stuff. So basically, like I said, the goal is to keep the humidity as stable as possible. So as I said earlier, the range in California where the humidity fluctuated between was generally a low of 40 and generally a high of 60. So when we came out to Tennessee, we decided that the range of the humidity would be, when we tried to, stabilize the humidity, we'd focus on somewhere right in the middle. So we're at the moment going for a humidity of around 50%. And the way you control the humidity in a wet climate like out here in Tennessee and throughout most of the Midwest and the East Coast where it's more humid, the way you control the humidity, there's two main ways, and one of those is the air conditioning. As you can see, I have my leather jacket on, and that's because it's not very hot in here because we have air conditioning. I got a lot of comments from people. I don't know if they're annoyed or amused. I really can't tell which, but they're always like, dude, it's June and you're wearing a leather jacket. What is happening? And that's because the places I'm in are air conditioned and the studio is air conditioned, so you'll be seeing me wearing this all year round. But the thing I wanted to mention is that air conditioning, as we might know, removes water from the air as well. That's why many air conditioners have some sort of way of ejecting water out of the system, and so you'll often see air conditioners leaking water. So air conditioners will remove water from the air, so when you have the air conditioning running, it's drying out the air. But what happens on a day, like probably today, when we don't really need the air conditioning running? It's not all that hot here. In California, you need the air conditioning running throughout the whole summer because it's like 100, and in some areas it's like 114 in the summer. Here in Tennessee, it's more mild. It's like 70, 80. Sometimes it's 90, but I think we're kind of past that time of the year already. And so it's starting to cool down a bit. At least today is rather cool. It's cloudy, overcast, and we don't need the air running. So what that means is the humidity is going to be building back up into the air. So that would mean there's going to be a fluctuation. So the air conditioning alone isn't going to be able to stabilize your humidity. It still will fluctuate, although it will bring it down to a more normal level. So what we decided to do is buy a dehumidifier. The one we got is basically an entry-level humidifier. It's around dehumidifier, excuse me. It's around $200. We got it from Home Depot. It's made by Toshiba, which is kind of weird because I've always thought of them as making computers and not dehumidifiers. But hey, I guess they're branching out now. So that is what we've got, and it's doing a pretty good job. The last couple of days when we've been using it, it's been able to keep the humidity right in the range of around 50. It has fluctuated a small bit because sometimes it will turn off, and like if you remove the water drawer, it seems to not turn back on when you put it in. You have to manually toggle the unit back on and off. So but the humidity has not fluctuated as much as it would have back in California or even before we got the dehumidifier. Now it's sitting right around 50, and it's going from around 53 to 50. That is the range where we have the humidity locked in, which is absolutely excellent for the piano. So this here is the dehumidifier, and I figured I'd give you guys a brief little tour of it. The first thing I wanted to mention is that this isn't normally where we keep it. Normally I have it in the control room where there aren't many sensitive instruments to humidity, and in fact a lot of the times I'll actually turn it off if I'm listening to something on the speakers. But this is the dehumidifier. Like I said, I don't normally have it right next to the piano. I just have it here just for this video, and after I'm done with this clip, I'm gonna go put it away back in the control room. So this is the dehumidifier. It ran around $200 at Home Depot, and operation is really simple. You just plug it in and hit the power button and it does its thing. There are a few buttons up on top. There's a filter, comfort, continuous, turbo, timer. You can select the range of humidity at which it tries to put the room at, and then over here on the right is a power button. This isn't a how to operate videos. I'm not going to go into everything that it can do, but this is the Toshiba dehumidifier. Down here we have the drawer that holds liquid. If I pull that out, there we go. If I pull that out, there actually is a little bit of water in there, like maybe a cup full or so, and you probably can't see that, but there is water in there. And apparently this can hold around 70 pints, and after about 24 hours it actually will fill all the way up. It has a nice little carrying handle, and that is really great. So of course this thing basically is a water generator, which is kind of cool, and so you can do a number of different things with the water. If you have plants, you can water your house plants with it, or if you have a goldfish pond like I do, you can actually use the water here to top off the water in the pond, which is kind of cool. Goldfish are pretty hardy, so they would be able to tolerate water, but this is very, very pure water. There's no chemicals, no bleach or chlorine or anything, so there's nothing needed to do with the water here. Might be a slightly different pH than the water that's in the pond, but the time it gets all the way into the pond, it would be very diluted. Like I said, goldfish are pretty hardy, so they should be able to tolerate a very slight fluctuation in the pH. Sometimes this thing seems to like to turn off when you put the drawer back in, so I think I have to turn it off and then back on again, and it will come back on. But that is the only quirk I've noticed with it, and it might not be doing that, but it does seem to like to turn off every time I put the drawer back in. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this little tour of the dehumidifier. It's doing a good job so far. Now this piano, the one I'm sitting behind, actually spent a lot of its time, a lot of its life in San Francisco, which probably would have been a more humid area of California. So it was probably a bit more used to the humidity because it was near the coast. And while I don't know the humidity levels in San Francisco, they were probably a bit more humid than, say, in Sacramento. So that is something also kind of interesting to note. So if you have a piano that has, say, pressure ridges, or it's spent a lot of its time in a very dry climate, moving it to a very moist climate can be dangerous. And that's something else I wanted to touch on. Pressure ridges, like I just mentioned, are basically where the soundboard has so much pressure on it that the wood has kind of squished together and it's formed a ridge in the middle. It's kind of like the way mountains are formed, where the plates collide and they push up a mountain. Basically, it's a little tiny mountain range on your piano. And the interesting thing about a pressure ridge on a soundboard is that pianos with pressure ridges actually tends to be the best pianos. One of my friends has a piano that I actually thought about buying at one point. It had a pressure ridge on it and it was a phenomenal piano. Truly amazing instrument. But the main reason I didn't buy it was because of that pressure ridge. If I took it out to Tennessee before I got the dehumidifier set up, it could have been damaged because the wood already is under extreme pressure, and as we might know, moisture expands wood. So that could cause the soundboard to crack, to come apart. I don't really know what would happen there, to be honest with you, but I do know that bad things would happen. It would probably crack, it would probably start to explode or something like that. Bad things would happen. So that is the main reason why if you have a piano with a pressure ridge, it's a very good idea to be in control of the humidity. The way you can tell that is with these little things. I have one of them inside my piano. I think I've mentioned these in a couple of other videos before too. I have one of these inside my piano. As you can see, the humidity says it is 55%. It'll probably start going up because I'm holding it. It usually does when I'm holding it because there's moisture and stuff. Yeah, 56. So we have one here inside the piano. We also have a couple on the doors of the studio on opposite ends of the studio as well to just kind of monitor the humidity. And as you'll be able to tell, the one that I can see over here is 55, so the same as the piano, and the one over there is actually a little bit lower than that. But the humidity is a lot more stable than it was in California. We have control over it now, and if we feel like we need a little bit more control, we can pick up another dehumidifier or just simply dial in this one. The one that we're using, what's kind of funny, is it actually isn't quite accurate. It's set to, I think the little screen on it says 65, but it's keeping the humidity at around 50, but it's consistent with itself, and it's been locking it in right around within a 5% gap right in for the last couple of days. It's been anywhere between 50 to 55 degrees percent humidity level. So that is really good. It seems to be very consistent. It's just not quite accurate, which is really interesting. It is an entry-level unit, so that could be why. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, you might want to go check out my channel if you haven't already. So if you do that, thank you very much. You might enjoy my piano reviews, my organ reviews, keyboard reviews, any of that. If you're new to the channel, you might enjoy checking that out. And if you do that, thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.